Grandfather already.
So we all know Mr. Ramsey Nouah, but please allow me to have the honor of actually telling you who he really is. Mr. Ramsey Nouah is a renowned Nigerian actor and director and the proprietor of Ramsey Films. With over 30 years in filmmaking, he has established himself as one of Nollywood's most celebrated talents. Let's clap for him. That's amazing. He gained prominence in the 1990s through the TV series Fortunes and has since starred in numerous iconic films, including The Figurine, 30 Days in Atlanta, Living in Bondage, Breaking Free, and Roger Snake, The Ahana Story. His contributions to Nollywood extend beyond acting, as he has successfully transitioned into directing and producing with a focus on telling authentic African stories. Before we get into speaking to Mr. Ramsey Nouah, there's been an issue of contention that we're going to look at, and he's going to give us some insight on that. And so I'll give us some background, because right now we are getting into the topic of decolonizing African cinema and reclaiming our stories and identity.
Against creative works. It all depends on what the director decides that, oh, I like this person seems to give me the best performance, out of many that I've come across. You know what I'm saying? And so it's pretty hard. Now, yes, we really would desire our own representation. I know that for certain. We would desire, but here, look at me. I'm biracial in Nollywood, but I am successful there in Nollywood. So there was no need to say, because I am mixed blood, so automatically I'm not Nigerian, and because of that, I can't be an actor here. It was open. Give an open arm for it to happen. So for me, it all depends. Now, where I will have a bit of concern is where dialect is not well, done. The nuances of the culture that they are talking about in the story is not properly in place. Then of course that becomes an issue. As far as skin tone is concerned, if the person can play the culture and whatever, biracial or whatever, is fine by me. It's determined by the creative directors, I think. So that's my take on it.
Okay, doesn't that negate the work of the writer, the original writer? Because then that brings into play the conflict between the director's choices and the writer. Have you faced that at any point, having to deal with what the writer would want and the director?
Can I ask you a question? Have you ever read the book of James Bond, 007? Do you know the exact look of 007, the way the writer wrote it?
No.
And then we have how many 007 actors? We have over 7 of them. And they don't look the part, they don't look all the same part. You get what I'm saying? The way the writer puts the thing together does not necessarily mean that the creative world would, depict exactly, to the exact tone. Not necessarily, It doesn't count like that. Now, if the writer, of course, wants that to be the main thing, then the writer should be in the production, in creating all of that, and be part of the creators and say, oh, I prefer, or I like this person befits the look of what I've created and stuff like that. Yeah, the writer should be part of that.
How does that speak to us as Ugandans who are trying to create authentic Ugandan stories? Because Nigeria has been known, especially Nollywood, to be very successful because you tell your stories as Nigerians. You're not pretending or trying to be Americans or anything like that. And in Uganda right now, the struggle we are having in some of our filmmaking processes is we're trying to make action movies, we're trying to make these things where we're jumping off buildings and doing all sorts of things which do not seem reality or realistic with our actual Ugandan culture. So how would you speak to that?
Okay, so that's a market determining factor. I noticed that the Ugandans love the action movies. I remember when I first came to Uganda, everybody that kept shaking me and giving me a hug, the first question is, hey, my guardian angel, hey, my guardian angel. Everybody talks about my guardian angel with me, which was my one of my only action films in Nollywood. But that's a film that has successfully crossed across borders throughout the East Coast. So I noticed that the East Coast likes action sequence. Now, whatever it takes, if you want to target that market, you have to find a way to give the people what they want. Do you understand it? So now, here's the thing. There are different ways to look at it. There are different ways. You could do your action sequence without it having like a backdrop of too much Hollywood or too much Chinese. You can cultivate your own style or how you do your thing and still make it very entertaining that the people will love it. That's the way you make it natural, how you make it yours, right?
Yes.
How you can make it mine.
Yes.
In other words, I'm speaking my dialect, I'm fighting like my local fight to be here, and it has an appeal to my audience, importantly. Yes, importantly, that's what I think the writers and the filmmakers need to put into cognizance when they're working on things of that nature.
So does that mean that the authentic African story has to be juxtaposed against what the people want?
That's a tricky question. So we come from the background of where filmmakers will say, do it the way you feel it. That is my background, in all fairness and all truth. But you see, this age and time has gone beyond that. Now the market determines the story, the kind of story you want to tell.
Yes.
Back in the days when filmmakers, they do film, they just do it how they feel. I can daydream things and put it in visuals and try to let people enjoy it with me.
Yes.
But it's my daydream, it's my feel. So I can do it the way I want. And back in the days, it used to be a good, successful story. It used to be a success story. But now, the market has changed.
Yes.
Now, back then, people were a bit more settled. I'm talking about the people like you now, for instance. Back in those days, youths didn't care much because there was good provision for them. Economically, things were okay. Financially, things were fine. So it was just a basic thing of being a youth, playing sports around your neighborhood, going to study in school, come back home to your parents. Parents' father is providing for all of that to happen. And there was union. And then we could just dream dreams and create things, and people will be glad to watch and be part of it. Now the economy is not the same. Now everybody is struggling to even feed, not to talk of surviving. The mind is in different places all at the same time. So you can't just create a dream and bring it to me, a hungry man, and tell me, oh, this is my dream. I'll throw it out the window. So a lot of people do not have the same attention span and the way things are at the time compared to now. So right now, people are in a mood where you either give me, for instance, the Ugandans, they will like action sequence. Either give me a Jackie Chan film, a 007 film, or any action sequence. Give me comedy. If you start to tell me stories that I feel I don't want to relate to, it's probably out the window. That's why all of a sudden, if you make stories that don't resonate with the people, it stays on the shelf.
Yes.
It doesn't go far. Because there are very few numbers who will celebrate it with you. But you want to have numbers to celebrate that with you, you give the people what they would like to see. That's where the problem is.
So does that mean that the African authentic story is not so much about it being steeped in African culture, but more about expressing who one truly is, for example, as a filmmaker, because the room is full of filmmakers. So if it is my true imagination, my true dream, is that the authentic African story, or does culture play a big role in that as well?
Culture plays a big role in whatever you do. Your background, plays a big role in whatever you do. Now, I'm not saying this is out the window, but it's going to be extremely weird that as a Ugandan, you're dreaming or trying to make a movie for Chinese people. It will feel off somehow. It will just feel like it's almost like saying you're singing off key. It will just go off. As a matter of fact, it's going to be hard for me to say, I want to tell a Chinese story, and I'm going to look for a Ugandan director or filmmaker to come and tell the Chinese story. It just seems off. So yes, you must have your background is what actually helps you tell your story. Your background is what resonates. You can't go and tell other people's story. You tell your story, which is, of course, infused in your culture, your tradition, your nuances, your dialect, everything is all part of it. That way you can tell the world, I want to hear your story. I want to hear the story of Australians, I want to hear the stories of Jamaicans and all of those things. They want to hear your story. What are the stories of Ugandans? You can't be a Ugandan and go to the Jamaican story. I'm like, where's the connection? Except you grew up there too.
The problem we have with the young people today is that we do not know too much about our own culture, because we are in the global village with social media and all that, and I think that is why many young people are telling the kind of stories they are telling, and that is why the question is rising up, that is this a true, authentic African story? But then you may find for that young person that is their authentic story. So is that something you can speak to the filmmakers here?
Yes, and I'll give you instances. For instance, in the Nigerian music industry, Hollywood or the American music industry was a huge influence on what they do. That's for a fact. I can tell you that for free. It took us several years for us to be able to sing strongly into our tune and dialects. And I'm not talking about the local singers from our local places already, who traditionally just do our singing in our dialects and our languages. But you see, this upcoming new generation is an infusion of so many things, right? Like beats are infused from either from South Africa, America, India. They'll fuse a lot of beats to create their own song and their own style, and they do it in their dialects. As a filmmaker, there's no harm in saying that your influence is by, Hollywood. There's no harm in it. Even Nollywood was influenced by Hollywood. But we have to find our background. We have to find how we're able to talk about our story and how we tell our stories best. So my own to you is, how can you get what influenced you? Maybe Hollywood, maybe K-drama, maybe Indian, China's, whichever one it is. How can you, as a filmmaker, put that together and make it a Ugandan film without it seeming as if you just replicated a Chinese film? So that's the important thing. It's a thin line. You just have to find it. It's a thin line. You just have to find it.
That's amazing. And as we wind up this amazing conversation we're having, I'll allow for 2 questions from the audience. Anyone with a question, please stand up quickly, and we will get to you. You have an opportunity to ask.
Is there a mic for them?
We can share. Anyone with a question?
Sorry.
Before we wind this up?
What if it is a suggestion? Once again, how are you? This topic is so sensitive, decolonizing our cinema from maybe the whites. You've talked about Mr. Ramsey, you've talked about James Bond. There was a time when they were looking for a new James Bond. Idris Elba was amongst those in the list.
Yeah.
And these people, they say they're white. They say Idris Elba is black.
Yeah.
And according to the original story, these characters, they have something in common. They are all from England, I don't know, from Europe. Now, they gave their reason. They said maybe, let's assume they've written a script. Idris Elba is in Scotland, and he's the only black guy, he's an agent. Oh, he will be blown. And we understood it as black people. These people, they have been acting Jesus, the character of Jesus. And the originality, sorry to say, the guy is somehow black. But for them, they have colonized the character of Jesus. Because I've talked about Jesus. Okay, is everyone hearing me? Yeah. They have been acting Jesus, a black character. They have colonized our character. But I don't know if you're familiar with Black Panther. with the Uganda, we had a king, exactly the same story. It was called Daudi Chwa. I think you understand that king with a black animal. These people, they documented during the colonization time. They documented that thing, they took it to England. I don't know how it ended to Marvel, but they're doing this film. What I can suggest, maybe we should document our stories or register them. Maybe we cannot be colonized if we are documented. Because sometimes I see movies on screen and I'll be like, not because the character is that good, but maybe the way they cast. They cast their people to do our African characters. Also in India, instead of using the real stars, maybe like Shah Rukh Khan to act in Slumdog Millionaire, they get someone mediocre, then they put their character to promote the what? Their industry, that the American actors are better than the rest. Vietnam came out and complained to the world what the Hollywood guys are doing. They portray Vietnamese like they are the villains. Russians, they are the one blowing up things. Arabs, Allah Akbar, they kill people, they are the terrorists. These people, there's the way they psychologically manipulate our stories, our cinema. We should understand how these streamlines work. Netflix can buy your story, but they can own it. They have a right to do it the way they want. If they can say maybe your king is a homosexual, you've sold the story. They have decolonized your story. Thank you. The microphone was off.
Thank you for that. Let's give him a hand clap.
Issa,
Yes, sir.
I think you can easily answer that question, but I'll give you an example. What's the film you mentioned just now? The Marvel film?
Black Panther.
If we do a lot of Black Panthers, then we can have like maybe some good collaboration doing that.
Yeah.
You know, if we do some more things of that nature where you want to tell your story in ways where it can resonate globally, then you could have a lot of collaboration. It is quite heavy, but this from my perspective. A lot of other filmmakers can see from different perspectives. But for me, it's more like I feel once you're able to make your film in a way where it becomes a global, you can get global audience. Don't forget, always underline the fact that filmmaking is a universal language, meaning that devoid of whatever it is, language, dialects, color, whatever it is, anybody watching should be able to understand what you are saying through that medium, through the film. It does not matter whether you're speaking Swahili, Yoruba, Igbo, Indian, Pakistani, whatever it is. It doesn't matter. If it's global, they will understand it. And when that starts to happen, it is easy to have collaboration. First, you must break into the global market, and with that, you can get collaboration. If you don't have a global market and you expect people to come to the market and share with you, it's going to be a tough one.